February 14, 1943. Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. Oberst Reinhardt watched American soldiers flee in disarray through his field glasses, their equipment abandoned, their formations shattered like glass. He had been trained to expect token resistance from inexperienced troops before inevitable collapse. What he would witness 72 hours later, through the acrid smoke of burning panzers and the screams of his own wounded, would shatter every assumption the Afrika Korps had made about their new enemy. The Americans weren't running away. They were learning. For Oberst Reinhardt and the 8,342 German soldiers who participated in Operation Frühlingswind, Spring Wind, between February 14 and 25, 1943, the collision between expectation and reality began the moment American forces stopped retreating. Among them were 127 Panzer commanders, veteran officers who had crushed French, British, and Polish formations across 2 continents, whose experiences at Kasserine Pass would prove far more unsettling than any previous campaign. According to declassified records from the German military archives in Freiburg, preserved in the Bundesarchiv Militararchiv, initial intelligence assessments of American combat effectiveness painted a dismissive picture. The 89-page document titled Bewertung der amerikanischen Kampffähigkeit in Nordafrika, Assessment of American Combat Capability in North Africa, dated January 1943, dedicated 12 pages to exploiting what German intelligence called systemic weaknesses in American military culture. What actually happened caught the Afrika Korps completely off guard. General Major Wolfgang Brenner, commanding the 21st Panzer Division's Reconnaissance Battalion, recorded in his combat diary, now housed at the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, captured after the war, his first encounter with reorganized American forces, February 17, 1943. Expected continued rout of American II Corps. Instead encountered coordinated artillery barrage of unexpected precision. Lost 4 tanks to positions we had assessed as abandoned. These are not the same soldiers we faced 3 days ago. Someone has taken control. Something has changed. The tactical preparation German commanders received before the offensive had painted American forces in specific, unambiguous terms. Intelligence briefings recovered from captured Afrika Korps headquarters near Sfax, translated by the Combined Services Detailed Interrogation Center and catalogued as CSDIC Report TNA 457, included detailed predictions of American behavior under pressure. According to these briefings, American soldiers were technically competent but tactically naive, over-reliant on material superiority, lacking combat experience and aggressive spirit. American commanders, the assessment stated, were schoolbook generals who would freeze when confronted with rapid, unconventional maneuvers. Rommel himself had written in a February 12 communiqué that the attack would test American resolve, which our experience suggests will collapse under sustained, professional pressure. Yet here stood Oberst Reinhardt, age 34, veteran of Poland, France, and 2 years in North Africa, watching American artillery units that had fled on February 14 now delivering coordinated counter-battery fire with devastating accuracy on February 17, watching tank destroyers that didn't exist in American doctrine manuals suddenly appear on his flanks. The cognitive dissonance wasn't merely tactical. It was fundamentally destabilizing to everything the Wehrmacht understood about how armies broke and how they behaved when broken. Lieutenant Friedrich Weber, commanding a Panzer IV company in the 10th Panzer Division, described the shift in a letter later intercepted by Allied censors and preserved in the National Archives at College Park, Maryland. On the first day, we advanced 30 kilometers. The Americans scattered like leaves. On the third day, we advanced 3 kilometers and lost 9 tanks. On the 5th day, we stopped advancing entirely. The Americans who ran on Tuesday were killing us methodically by Thursday. This is not how defeated armies behave. We have broken the French, the British at Gazala, the Poles. When an army breaks, it stays broken. These Americans, they broke and then reassembled themselves like a machine. I do not understand this. The revelation of American adaptability came in waves, each more tactically jarring than the last. According to after-action reports from Panzer Army Africa headquarters, which received casualty and equipment reports throughout the battle, the pattern became undeniable by February 18. Hauptmann Ernst Vogel, intelligence officer for the 21st Panzer Division, maintained detailed operational logs that were later captured and donated to the Imperial War Museum in London. His entry from February 18, 1943 reads, "Analyzed engagement patterns over past 4 days. Day 1, American forces showed confusion, poor coordination, abandoned positions prematurely. Day 2, continued retreat but artillery response improved significantly. Day 3, retreat halted at predetermined defensive lines. Coordinated counterattacks on our flanks. Day 4, American positions reinforced, fire discipline excellent, clear evidence of tactical reorganization. This rate of adaptation exceeds any opponent we have faced. Recommendation: reassess operational timeline and expected resistance levels." The tactical doctrine of rapid armored exploitation, which had served Rommel brilliantly at Gazala and Tobruk in 1942, assumed a simple principle: once an enemy's defensive line broke, momentum and psychological shock would prevent reorganization. The breakthrough created panic, panic created rout, rout created collapse. In practice, this meant German forces expected Kasserine Pass to open the road to Tebessa and the Allied supply depots beyond, a prize that would cripple the entire American position in North Africa. Intelligence estimates projected reaching Tebessa within 5 days of the initial breakthrough. By February 19, German spearheads were still fighting 15 kilometers from objectives they should have reached on February 16. Oberst Dieter Hartmann, operations officer at Panzer Army Africa headquarters in Sfax, kept a personal journal that was confiscated by American forces in 1943 and later archived at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University. His entry from February 19, 1943 reveals the growing concern: the breakthrough at Kasserine should have collapsed the American front. Instead, it has become a meat grinder. American units that fled initially have reappeared on our flanks with new commanders, new tactics, and murderous artillery support. Rommel expected to be in Tebessa by now. Instead, we are fighting for every kilometer against an enemy that appears to be learning faster than we can exploit our advantages. This is not the inexperienced rabble our intelligence promised. But American tactical adaptation was merely the most visible layer of the revelation. Beneath it lay something more fundamentally challenging to German operational assumptions: the American system's ability to absorb failure, identify problems, and implement solutions with shocking speed. The German military prided itself on operational flexibility and initiative at lower command levels, the famous Auftragstaktik or mission-type tactics. Yet this system assumed cultural and doctrinal continuity, commanders trained in the same traditions, understanding the same principles instinctively. The Americans appeared to be inventing new doctrine in real time, in the middle of battle, and making it work through sheer systematic efficiency. General Major Brenner's combat diary entry from February 20, 1943 captured this collision of systems: intercepted American radio traffic today. Heard a major, countermand a colonel's orders and redirect artillery fire to our assembly area. In the Wehrmacht, such insubordination would mean court-martial. But the artillery fire was devastatingly accurate. The Americans appear to value results over hierarchy in combat situations. This creates chaos, but it also creates adaptation. We have encountered a new battalion commander who replaced his predecessor 3 days ago. He is fighting more effectively than officers with months in theater. The American system allows rapid promotion of competent leaders and removal of incompetent ones, even during active operations. This is theoretically inefficient. In practice, it is proving lethal. Perhaps no evidence reveals the shock of German commanders more clearly than the communications intercepts preserved by the Funkabwehr, German signals intelligence, during the battle. These intercepts, preserved in the Bundesarchiv, provide an intimate window into evolving German assessment of their enemy. A radio message from Oberst Reinhardt to division headquarters, intercepted and preserved in U.S. Army Signals Intelligence Archives, dated February 21, 1943, exemplifies this transformation: request permission to halt advance and consolidate positions. Enemy resistance has exceeded all projections. American forces demonstrating coordination and tactical proficiency inconsistent with intelligence assessments. Continued offensive operations will result in unacceptable casualties for minimal gains. Recommend immediate reassessment of American combat capabilities. The analysts who monitored these communications noted recurring themes: shock at American adaptation speed, confusion about American tactical flexibility, growing respect for American artillery effectiveness, and increasing concern that the offensive had failed to achieve strategic objectives. By February 22, these themes appeared in over 70% of German communications from the Kasserine Pass sector. By February 25, 1943, when Rommel ordered German forces to withdraw from Kasserine Pass and consolidate defensive positions, the scope of the revelation facing the Afrika Korps had become undeniable. According to final statistics compiled by Panzer Army Africa, the operation had achieved initial tactical success but failed utterly to achieve strategic objectives. The statistics told a story German commanders found difficult to accept: penetration of 15 kilometers against projected 50 kilometers. Duration of 11 days against projected 5 days. Casualties of approximately 2,000 Germans against inflicted American casualties of approximately 6,000, a ratio that suggested tactical success but revealed strategic failure, as the Americans remained in position while German forces withdrew. Oberst Reinhardt wrote in his final diary entry from Kasserine Pass, "We pushed them back. We killed more of them than they killed of us. By any tactical measure, we won. Yet I feel we have lost something crucial: our advantage of experience. They have bought experience with blood, and they purchased it at wholesale prices because they have blood to spend. We cannot afford such purchases. They can afford to learn. We cannot afford to teach them. This is the trap: every battle makes them more dangerous, while every battle weakens us. At Kasserine, we taught the Americans how to fight Germans. This may prove the costliest victory of the war." The revelation had occurred. The invisible wall between German assumptions and American reality had been systematically demolished through 11 days of brutal combat. But the full consequences of this transformation, for the Afrika Korps, for Rommel, for the North African campaign, were still to unfold. What would happen when these American forces, carrying hard-won knowledge, met the Afrika Korps again? How would the Wehrmacht adapt to an enemy that learned faster than they could exploit advantages? And what would this transformation reveal about the limits of tactical excellence when facing systematic, ruthless adaptation? March 17, 1943. El Getter, Tunisia. Oberst Klaus Reinhardt stood in the turret of his Panzer IV, watching American positions through the pre-dawn darkness. 31 days after Kasserine Pass, the Afrika Korps was attacking again. But this time, something felt different. The Americans weren't retreating. They were waiting. The 127 German panzer commanders who survived Kasserine Pass faced an unexpected crisis as they prepared for subsequent operations in Tunisia. According to operational records preserved at the Bundesarchiv Militararchiv, over 60% of unit commanders expressed concern about American capabilities in their post-Kasserine assessments. They had taught the Americans how to fight Germans. Now they would face the students they had unwillingly trained. Hauptmann Ernst Vogel confided to his superior officer before the El Getter offensive, "At Kasserine, we faced inexperienced Americans and broke them temporarily. Now we face experienced Americans who remember exactly how we broke them. They will not make the same mistakes twice. We may not survive making ours again." At Wehrmacht headquarters in Tunisia, German intelligence officers analyzed American force dispositions obsessively. The scrutiny was brutal. Commanders who had predicted easy victory at Kasserine now faced questions about their judgment. According to testimonies preserved in the U.S. Army Military History Institute, interrogators viewed the Kasserine assessments not as reasonable predictions but as evidence of dangerous underestimation. Lieutenant Friedrich Weber, who had written about Americans reassembling like a machine, faced his reconstituted American opponents on March 23 at El Getter. His after-action report, captured by Allied forces and preserved in the National Archives, reveals the psychological impact. We advanced at 0600 hours expecting resistance similar to Kasserine Day 1. Instead encountered prepared positions, coordinated artillery fire, and tank destroyers in concealed positions exactly where our doctrine dictates we would advance. They have studied us. They know how we think. At 0645 hours, lost 3 tanks to flanking fire from positions we had assessed as unsuitable for American armor. Assessment was based on our doctrine. Americans are not constrained by our doctrine. By 0800 hours, requested permission to withdraw. Permission denied. By 1200 hours, my company ceased to exist as a functional unit. By April 1943, operational surveys showed over 75% of German commanders acknowledged that American forces had fundamentally transformed since Kasserine Pass. The tactical naivety had vanished, replaced by systematic competence that grew more dangerous with each engagement. Yet some German officers refused to accept this new reality. Oberst Stefan Kruger, a decorated veteran of the French campaign, insisted in staff meetings that American success resulted from material superiority alone, not tactical improvement. On April 7, 1943, he led his battalion in a flanking attack at Wadi Akarit using tactics identical to those that succeeded at Kasserine. His battalion suffered 60% casualties in 4 hours. Kruger himself was captured, wounded, by American forces he had dismissed as factory workers in uniforms. During his interrogation, preserved in Combined Services Detailed Interrogation Center files, Kruger made a revealing statement: "You did not defeat us with courage or skill. You defeated us with radios and replacement officers and systematic analysis. This is not warfare. This is industrial process." The American intelligence officer conducting the interrogation noted, "Subject appears more disturbed by American tactical competence than by his capture. Repeatedly insists that American success violates proper military principles." The transformation created cascading effects through the North African campaign. Of the 127 Panzer commanders who fought at Kasserine Pass, 89 were killed, wounded, or captured in subsequent battles against the same American forces they had initially routed. The casualty rate among these experienced officers, 70%, was nearly double the rate for Wehrmacht armored commanders in other theaters during the same period. German intelligence summaries from April 1943 revealed stark differences in how commanders assessed American capabilities. Those who had fought at Kasserine showed dramatically higher respect for American forces. 78% rated Americans as capable and improving rapidly versus 23% among officers without Kasserine experience. The men who had seen Americans learn under fire understood something their colleagues did not, that American tactical competence would only increase with time. But the strategic cost was more devastating than casualty statistics suggested. General Major Wolfgang Brenner, in a letter to his wife intercepted by Allied intelligence in May 1943, wrote, "We won at Kasserine Pass and lost the North African campaign. Not because of the battle's tactical outcome, but because we revealed our tactics to an enemy with unlimited capacity to analyze, adapt, and counter them. Every Panzer tactic, every exploitation technique, every operational principle we employed at Kasserine, the Americans have studied them all and developed counters. We are fighting with a playbook they have memorized. They are fighting with tactics we have never seen. This is not a sustainable equation." By May 1943, academic analyses within the Wehrmacht's tactical schools documented how Kasserine Pass had fundamentally altered the North African campaign's trajectory. The battle that appeared to be a German tactical victory had accelerated American operational maturity by an estimated 6 months, according to assessments by Oberkommando der Wehrmacht Operational Research Staff. Perhaps no incident better captures the reversal than the fate of Oberst Reinhardt himself. On May 11, 1943, 2 days before the final Axis surrender in North Africa, Reinhardt's Panzer Company was surrounded near Bizerta by elements of the U.S. 1st Armored Division, some of the same units that had fled from his advance at Kasserine Pass. According to the surrender documentation preserved at the U.S. Army Heritage and Education Center, the American commander who accepted Reinhardt's surrender was Major Robert Harrison, whose battalion had lost 40% of its strength retreating from Reinhardt's advance on February 14. Harrison's after-action report includes this exchange. Colonel Reinhardt asked how long my unit had been in combat. I told him we had first engaged his unit at Kasserine Pass. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "The battalion that ran from us in February is accepting our surrender in May? How is this possible?" I replied, "We learn from the best teachers. You taught us every mistake we couldn't afford to make twice." Colonel Reinhardt nodded slowly and said, "Then we taught you too well." The statistical evidence of American transformation was undeniable. At Kasserine Pass in February, American forces suffered a 3-to-1 casualty ratio disadvantage against German forces. By the Battle of El Getter in March, the ratio had equalized to 1-to-1. By the final battles in April and May, American forces inflicted casualties at a 2:1 advantage. The learning curve wasn't gradual, it was exponential. Medical records tell their own story. German casualties at Kasserine Pass primarily resulted from combat action, less than 15% from artillery. By April 1943, over 60% of German casualties resulted from American artillery fire, evidence of the dramatic improvement in American fire control, coordination, and targeting. The Americans had identified their strength, superior artillery, and ruthlessly exploited it. By 1975, when German and American veterans held a joint reunion at the old Kasserine Pass battlefield site, the event provided opportunity for final reflections. 43 former Afrika Korps officers attended, including 3 who had commanded units during the original battle. Former Oberst Reinhardt, then 76 years old and living in Hamburg, gave a speech that was recorded by the U.S. Army and archived at the Military History Institute. In February 1943, we defeated the Americans at this place. We drove them from the field. We inflicted heavy casualties. We proved our tactical superiority. And in doing so, we created the force that would defeat us. The Americans learned more from their defeat here than we learned from our victory. They analyzed every mistake. We dismissed every warning. They adapted everything. We changed nothing. By May, they had become the force we thought we were: tactically proficient, operationally flexible, and backed by resources we could not match. Kasserine Pass was Germany's tactical victory and strategic catastrophe. Former Major Robert Harrison addressed the German officers, "You defeated us thoroughly at Kasserine Pass. You exposed every weakness in our training, doctrine, and leadership. That defeat was the most valuable experience of our military education. You showed us exactly what professional soldiers could do, and exactly what we needed to become. We learned fast because we had to. You taught us the cost of learning slowly." On May 13, 1943, when the last Axis forces in North Africa surrendered, over 275,000 German and Italian soldiers entered Allied captivity. Among them were veterans of Kasserine Pass who had experienced firsthand the transformation of American forces from routed novices to competent professionals in less than 3 months. Former Oberst Reinhardt died in 2003 at age 94. His obituary included this quote from a 1995 interview: "Kasserine Pass taught me that armies are not defeated by tactics alone. They are defeated when their tactical excellence cannot match their enemy's systematic improvement." At Kasserine, we demonstrated tactical excellence. The Americans demonstrated systematic improvement. We won the battle through superior tactics. They won the war through superior systems. The 127 Panzer commanders who fought at Kasserine Pass carried the seeds of a truth that would reshape modern military doctrine, that in extended conflicts between industrial powers, the advantage lies not with forces possessing initial tactical superiority, but with forces possessing superior capacity for systematic learning and adaptation. The Germans never knew what hit them, not at Kasserine Pass, where they achieved tactical victory, but in the months that followed, when the Americans they had bloodied, routed, and educated systematically dismantled every tactical advantage the Wehrmacht possessed. That proved to be the most devastating reversal of all.